We're in the heart of Dry Creek Valley with David Mounts of Mounts Vineyards and Mounts Family Winery. We are currently in a Zinfandel Vineyard. And David, tell us a little bit about the property and how much is planted and a little bit of the history of the Mounts Vineyard.
Okay, so this property has been in my family 3 generations now. My grandfather, coming here in the 1940s, purchased the first 50 acres with the intent of actually farming prunes. Prunes were a major crop in this valley back then. Grapes, not so much. Coming off of Prohibition, grapes were virtually worthless. We did farm grapes throughout the history up till now. The entire property is now 140 acres. The first 50 acres purchased in the 40s, the next 60 acres in the 50s. And this last parcel that we're standing on is about 30 acres that my father purchased in the early 70s when the property came up for sale. So starting in the late 60s, when my father came back from college, prunes were sort of on the out, and we began replanting the ranch to grapes, which we are currently now farming 90 acres of vineyard. Most of the fruit we sell to other wineries. We have 8 or 9 different clients, but we use a certain percentage for our own production. This block we're standing in, we playfully call the Loma block. This was planted right after the parcel was purchased in the early 70s. This is Zinfandel on St. George. It's our largest block of older head-trained Zinfandel of about 15 acres.
Tell us a little bit about the soil. As we're driving around, I see a lot of red ore. Is that what it is?
Well,
Volcanic?
there's many soil profiles on this property, anywhere from shale to a sort of yellow, loamy clay. But the really prized soil that we love on this ranch is the truly volcanic, iron-rich clay loams. They tend to help retain a lot of deep fruit character in the wines from the vines that are grown on those soils. It's not continuous, but it comes and goes in patches. And not to say that those soils don't have their own chemical issues, but they tend to be a little lower in pH, a little more acidic soils. But Zinfandel certainly does very well on that ground, as well as Petit Syrah.
Right. So we're now, as you said, in the La Loma Zinfandel Vineyard.
Right.
Can you run down the different varieties that are grown by Mounts Vineyard?
So about 35 acres is planted as Zinfandel. Not all of it head trained. We have some on trellis, which in some perception is not favored. We actually like the trellising. I'll go into that later, but we actually farm probably the largest amount of Petit Syrah in the valley also, at about 15 acres. It's pretty uncommon to have that much. Most people have it just planted in a few acre lots. We farm Cabernet at about 10 acres, Syrah at about 8 acres. Then we have a lot of little parcels around. We have only a couple acres of Merlot left. We have a couple acres of Viognier planted. We have about 4 acres now of Grenache, about 3 acres of Malbec, 3 acres of Cab Franc. So we like to diversify. That's always been our thing. It certainly started back in the 60s when my father planted his first block of Petit Syrah in 67, 68, which is at the directly ahead of us down that way. We'll take a look at it later. The block is currently not there anymore. Petit Syrah is a very difficult variety to farm any longer than 20, 30 years. It's very susceptible to many diseases. So over the years, and now especially as we replant a block or we evaluate where we're going to plant something, we like to diversify and not always run with the current market on what's hot and what's not. Now we plant things that we want for our winery, or we think has great potential in this valley that maybe people haven't taken a look at yet.
Right. We're here on the very last day of September, heading into October, and there's talk about some rain coming up in the next few days. Can you talk about a couple of things? First of all, how would you characterize the 2011 growing season and the harvest so far, and what concerns do you have as a grower as we head into perhaps some rain beginning of next week?
It's been a very turbulent season. We actually started out the spring months looking to be like it was going to be very dry and very warm. The month of May turned cold and wet again, all the way into June. A lot of our vines were going into bloom at that time, and we see the results now. A lot of them didn't set very well. But then it kind of stayed cool most all the summer, whereas the East Coast was suffering from a lot of 100-degree weather. We never saw much past 90 most of the summer. We've had a warm spell now in September, but early rains like this always seem to pop their heads up, sometimes later in October, sometimes beginning of October. Rain is definitely a challenge. Everywhere in the world, France, the drier the season, the better. These head train vines suffer tremendously from moisture and rain because they don't have a very open fruit zone. They tend to hold a lot of moisture internally in the vine, and Zinfandel, being a thin grape variety, does like to break down, and organisms can feed off of that, like botrytis. We'll see later some other areas that we've put on trellis and discuss why we like that better. But for our winery, we've got most of our production off now, picking furiously the last few days. And everything is there, everything is ripe. We tend to be very early out here on this ranch. We're a warm site, but still very cool at night. So we'll see how much this rain amounts to. I don't know that. I think it's something we can recover from. Now in 2009, when we had 6 inches of rain on October 11th, that kind of ended the season, and things after that were difficult to make decent wine out of. But we'll see that as they hit the market.
Okay, great. So now we're going to go to another location.
Let's do that.